Hi everyone, we've got a very special podcast tonight. We're going to be covering PlayStation exclusives that have been abandoned and ones that we would really love to see Sony bring back. With me tonight is TheMadBelmont.
Ayo!
So, where can people find you if they want to check out your content? And can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Okay, so you can find me over on my YouTube at TheMadBelmont. It's all in the name. I primarily do Castlevania stuff, Metroidvania stuff. I'm going to institute 3D platformers into my content because I do like 3D platformers and I want to talk about them a little bit. And you can also follow me over on Twitter, same username, TheMadBelmont. I just tweet about stuff that I'm passionate about over there. So those are the two places you can most commonly find me at.
What 3D platformers are you going to be instituting into your content?
Basically any 3D platformer. I do love me some 3D platformers. I grew up on them, as did Leaper here. So,
Yep.
basically ones like Gex and Super Mario 64, all the later Super Mario games, Pac-Man World, Crash, Spyro, Ratchet and Clank. A lot of the stuff we're going to be talking about tonight, because there are some 3D platformers we're going to be talking about here.
Yep.
So, yeah, stuff like that, basically.
And that actually brings me right into my first one. Sly Cooper.
Oh, yes! Dude, okay, you have no idea. Well, actually, you do, because you grew up during this time. So, during the PS2 era, Sony hit a fucking grand slam when it came to 3D platformers on the PS2. They killed it. You have Sly Cooper, Jak and Daxter, which we're going to be talking about here in a bit. Ratchet and
Clank, which is still going, and one of my favorite game series of all time. And one of the few shooters that I actually really enjoy.
Understandably, I actually really enjoy Ratchet and Clank as well, and really all those 3D platformers from that era. Like, that was my childhood, you know?
I'm just a couple years older than you are, so I was kind of in my early to mid-teens when they were coming out, but you know what? I still loved 3D platformers at the time.
Yeah. So, with Sly Cooper, this is a series by Sucker Punch. Now, you may, if you're watching this and you're a little bit younger than us, you may know Sucker Punch for the Infamous games, or most recently, Ghost of Tsushima. That studio made Sly Cooper back in the day, and those games were phenomenal. 1, 2, Band of Thieves, which I think is the best in the series personally, and then 3, Honor Among Thieves, I think is what it was called.
Yes, same here. And, you know what? I don't know if you've played Ghost of Tsushima, but I would say that the lessons Sucker Punch learned from both Infamous and Sly Cooper are easily on full display with that game, because it takes the best of every element from both games.
I have not played that game yet.
Okay, so it takes the parkour platforming from the Infamous series.
Okay.
Which Sly Cooper had a little bit of, but it was very simplified, as you know.
Yeah.
But it made sense because it was before parkour was really a thing, and, well, that's what raccoons do.
Yeah.
Anyways, it takes the parkour of Infamous, plus all of the stealth mechanics used in Sly Cooper, minus the sneaking around in a barrel.
Oh, nice! Okay.
So it is kind of almost a spiritual successor to Sly Cooper in a way. Even though it's not, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, so Sly Cooper was this very cartoony 3D platformer, had a cel-shaded art style to it, which I feel really helped age that game super well. That trilogy, anyway. Or, well, 4 games, but I'll get into that here in a minute. So, the original trilogy was made by Sucker Punch on the PS2. And those games, man, like, you play them now, and they still play really well. Like I said, the cel-shaded art style really helps. The visuals age well, because back then, in the PS2 era, unless you were like Castlevania or Metal Gear Solid or something with a huge budget, the visuals for those type of games back then didn't really age well.
They aged like milk in the sun.
Yeah, they were not too well. But
even some of the more cartoony ones, like Crash Wrath of Cortex, Crash to Insanity, Spyro Enter the Dragonfly. Fuck that game.
That is blasphemous! That is blasphemous!
oh, come on! It's not that bad.
I had super bad experiences with Enter the Dragonfly. That's why I'm saying that.
It was a very glitchy game, and so, like, if you didn't have any problems with it, like I did, very cool, a very decent platformer. If you did, like he did, I'm assuming, then, yeah, it was a bad day for you.
I had a game-breaking glitch where I couldn't even get past the title screen sometimes.
Oh,
and it would
that
corrupt
hurts.
my save file. And it would corrupt my save file. And it also deleted other shit off my memory card by corrupting my memory card. So, fuck that game.
Oh, man. Okay, yeah. Now I understand it. Because we were messaging each other the other day, and he said that, and I'm like, what? How? You know, I see now. I see it. I see the light.
Yeah, so it's like, this game ruined Spyro for me for the longest time.
Oh, man. That is horrible, man. I feel for you on that.
Yeah. Thankfully, it was early days in my PlayStation 2 career, so I didn't have anything, like, majorly important saved there, but, you know?
Yeah.
Imagine if I'd had, like, a Final Fantasy on there and corrupted hundreds of hours of gameplay.
That would suck. That would suck.
But even those games didn't age all that well, graphically.
Except for 10. 10 did. Really well. But
That's true, but I was talking about the cartoony 3D platformers.
oh, okay. Yeah, so, back on topic here. So, yeah, even the 2D, even the cartoony games, like he was saying, they didn't really age too well. But Sly Cooper did, because it had that cel-shaded art style to it, and it had a storyline and characters that, you know, for a kiddie, for a platformer series that was really made with kids in mind, it had a lot of freaking depth to its story and its characters.
And it had a lot of mature ideas and themes incorporated into it as well.
And they masked it. That's the thing, they masked it to where adults could pick up on it, but kids, it just flew right over their heads. I know it did me at the time, because, you know, I was just a naive little kid enjoying, you know, running around, jumping, hitting dudes with my fucking stick, and getting these coins and stuff like that.
And the sound design of Sly Cooper was so amazing.
Yes, how whenever you go sneaking around that little... like, that, I love doing that.
Also, the coins. They had a very satisfying clang to them when you would collect them.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I can't make the sound effect, but if you... You know what? How about you just insert a example of it?
I definitely will try to get that. If not, I can easily just go get the sound effects themselves off the internet.
Yeah, that's what I meant. But it's almost as satisfying hearing that sound as it is hearing the rings in Sonic.
Just to go to the back.
Yep. So, another series... Oh, I forgot to mention. So, after the original 3 games on the PS2, there was a 4th game called Thieves in Time that was released for the PS3. That game was developed by Sanzaru Games at the time, and it got a lot of mixed reviews. Some people really love that game, and then some people think that it is nowhere near as good as Sucker Punch's games. So I've never played it. I've never played it personally.
I think it's better than the Sucker Punch games, actually.
Wow. Okay. Did not see that one coming.
You know what? They incorporated new ideas. They felt in line with what Sucker Punch would have done themselves if they'd continued the series. They might not have implemented them in the same way, but they actually made sense inside the game because the new costumes, they gave you new stealth options. They gave you new abilities that you could use within inside them. That was actually pretty innovative for a Sly Cooper game.
Wow.
Other games had done it, but it felt right. You know what I mean?
That is crazy. I'm gonna have to go back and play that. That sounds dope.
Yeah, it was. And, meeting Sly's ancestors and learning their skills. That made the gameplay loop really, really satisfying, and it gave Sly even more abilities that he could play with, and you could actually combo some of them together and make really unique sneaking scenarios.
That's
and if you
insane.
fucked it up, it actually gave you the ability to save yourself, because not all of the stealth sections were insta-death if you failed.
Ah, okay. Now, one thing that I think definitely lends this series to coming back eventually is the fact that Thieves in Time left on a cliffhanger, apparently.
It did. A massive one.
So...
But you know what? They could easily have that as a jumping off point as the reboot.
That is true. That is true. Now, I don't know what this twist is, specifically, but I'm going to have to get it spoiled here. So, if you do not want any spoilers for Thieves in Time, I am going to leave a timestamp on the screen right now. Skip ahead to this if you don't want to be spoiled.
And maybe use the chapters system as well to make things a little easier.
I'm going to have to play around with that. But yeah, so...
Sly gets trapped in ancient Egypt. I won't tell you how, but he does.
Okay.
And basically, Sly's friends are trying to find a way to bring him back. That is literally how Sly Cooper 4 ends.
Okay. I see the game here.
Yep. But, they could easily do so much with that as a potential reboot. For example, they could have Sly Cooper actually establishing the Cooper clan.
They could. They really could. And then they could have, a whole series, going through different time periods as a member of the Cooper clan.
Yep. And that could lead to some interesting gameplay decisions. You could recruit your own thieves and make your own gang. That would be pretty cool and innovative for a 3D platformer, if you think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or they could go, you know what? Sly establishes the Cooper clan, but he's also trying to break the time loop that he's stuck in.
Yeah.
And then... Or they could just be disregard it and start afresh. They have options.
A lot of options. And if they were to bring this back, what developer would you want to see bring this character and bring this franchise back for new generation?
I would love to see Sucker Punch take another stab at it, but I don't think they will. I think that Insomniac would be a really interesting studio for it, but here's what I think is the best possible solution. Take some existing members from Sucker Punch who still have a passion for the series, establish a new studio, call it something different, and hire a whole bunch of guys and girls and non-binary folks from our generation, or my generation and then your generation, since I think there is a small generational gap.
Yeah,
a whole bunch of younger and a whole bunch of younger folk just coming out of video game colleges who are hungry to make their way in the industry, and have younger people focus on it.
Yeah, younger people with a passion for platformers, specifically. Because if you hire somebody who is super passionate about FPS games, and you put them on a platformer, not a good mix. Not a good mix. So you gotta find people that are passionate about the genre. Alright? And there's a 5-year gap between me and you. So you're kind of like in the tail end of Gen X, per se. I'm a millennial.
No, I'm actually a millennial.
Okay, so you're kind of like at the start of the millennial generation. I'm like right in the middle of it. So
millennials were between 81 and 96.
okay. So yeah, I fall in that line, basically.
Yeah, you're almost a Zoomer, as they're called.
Whew, man. But yeah, so we're both in the same generation. Just like I said, 5-year gap. So
Yeah.
hire people from our generation that grew up with these 3D platformers at their height, at their peak, and just let them have one of the best franchises ever from this genre, and let them run wild with it.
And like I said, hire people who are hungry in the industry. Get the mentality that Naughty Dog, Insomniac, and Sucker Punch had in the late 90s and early 2000s. Of course, we don't want the crunch culture that those studios had at that time.
Exactly.
That's an interesting topic to discuss another time, but I want to acknowledge it because it was a thing, and Insomniac was especially toxic for how they did it, but the thing is, it was because that's how ambitious and how hungry the folks working there actually were.
Yeah, absolutely. So, another franchise, and this is where I come into play here, another franchise that I adore from that era of the PS2, and one that I think should fucking come back, is Jak and Daxter.
Yep, I agree with that. I think that... Move on from Naughty Dog from that one. I think that they are a completely different studio now. They wouldn't understand Jak and Daxter anymore, and to be honest, I don't think anyone's left from that era there.
No, I don't think so. I think it's mostly people that were there at the start of the PS3 generation and were instrumental in them turning in the direction that they are right now that are there. So they wouldn't understand Jak and Daxter too well, I don't think, anyway.
No,
so,
and I'm gonna be honest, I'm not really a big fan of modern Naughty Dog. I admit they make good games, but I'm not a fan of them.
I'm hit or miss with them. You know, like Uncharted, love that series. Last of Us 1, love that game. Last of Us 2, that game hit me super hard in the emotions with what happens at the start of the game, and I have not gone back to that game ever since then, because I don't want to have to restart it and go through that trauma again, basically. So,
understandable. And I'll be honest, I kind of started checking out of Naughty Dog around Uncharted 4.
Fair.
It didn't feel like an Uncharted game anymore, either. You know what I mean? It had the underpinnings and the mechanics, but something just felt cynical about that game, you know?
I don't agree with that. I think it felt like one, but then again, who am I to judge? You know, I'm not really a Naughty Dog super fan, so.
And I've been a Naughty Dog super fan more or less since Crash 2.
For me, the studios that I'm more of a super fan of are Konami and... actually, yeah, there's a couple. Konami, id, Machine Games. Those are the ones that I'm super fans of.
Qualcomm, Insomniac, SNK for me. Those are my big three now.
So, with that, Jak and Daxter. I think that they need to bring this back, and I think that they need to go in the direction of the first game with the tone of it.
I agree.
Because Yeah, 2 and 3 were good. They were really funny at points. But that kind of darker tone that Naughty Dog went for in those two games, I don't know. If you compare those two to the first one, you're just like, whoa, what a tonal shift.
Yeah. And I get the tonal shift. They wanted to pivot. They wanted to mature with their audience, which I get. I respect it. But it also feels like they kind of pivoted too hard.
Yeah. I mean, when you pivot, what you do is you have one game that's kind of like a, half and half. Half of what you're familiar with, and then half of what you're doing, half of the tone that you're trying to switch to, so that it's not a jarring transition. But nope, Naughty Dog with that second game was just like, nope, we're going full on in this direction. Sorry to anybody that, has a hard time adjusting, but we gotta do this.
Basically, they went edgelord.
So So, it can definitely be a jarring tonal shift. If you're really into that tone of the first game, and then you play the second one, you're like, wow, okay.
It's a whole different ball game.
Yeah. So, definitely make it more like the first game. Please don't add any weapons to it, okay? Because 2 and 3 drove me nuts with those damn guns. They really did.
Same here. And the shooting didn't really feel all that great to me.
Nope.
I mean, it was okay. It wasn't lights out amazing, but it was just acceptable. That's the best way I can describe it, is it was acceptable. You know what? Jak 2 and 3 aged poorly.
They really did. Because I have the HD Remaster Collection on the PS3. The first one aged beautifully. Yep. And then I played
the controls were a little clunky, but that was kind of the era.
Yeah, it really was. So if you can look past that, you're going to have a good time with the first one. The second and the third one are going to drive you up the fucking wall. Because there are some sections in those games, specifically in Jak 2, that really, really, really just get under your skin. Because they made them so pointlessly hard when they really didn't need to be. But they were because of the clunky controls and the decent shooting.
Yep. Who would you want helming a Jak and Daxter reboot?
For me, personally,
You can go with studios outside of Sony's purview if that makes it easier for you.
Okay. I want Toys for Bob doing it.
You stole my answer. That is who I want doing it too.
Well, then we can just say we agree on this one. So,
yep.
Yeah, we both think Toys for Bob should do it, because I was actually just playing a little bit of Crash 4 before we started doing this recording, and my God, they handled that game so well that I think that if they were handed the reins to Jak and Daxter, I think they can make one that was better than any of Naughty Dog's games, personally.
I agree with you. Also, you know what? Crash 4 is my second favorite Crash game.
So far, it's looking like it's going to be my favorite, honestly. Like, I love that game. I am loving it.
You're going to love it until you have to get to the time trials.
Actually, I don't even think it's the time trials that are going to give me any problems. I think it's those damn insane perfect relics that are going to drive me nuts with that game.
That's what I was talking about with the time trials.
Oh my God. I'm not looking forward to that.
Toys for Bob did go kind of far in the, we're going to make it hard as fuck and we're going to punch you in the dick and you're going to like it.
I guess I'm going to have to like it, because I do intend on platinuming that game. So, hooray!
I'm going to try to platinum it eventually. Might lose my sanity in the process. You could say it's going to drive me insane.
Yo, killing me with this.
Future editing me, please roast him for that. Just do it. Just do it.
That was very intentional on my part. I was hoping to get that response.
So, yeah, moving on from that, go to the corner, by the way.
But yeah, Toys for Bob, they would be the perfect studio to handle and helm a Jack reboot, and I would love to
Absolutely.
see and I would love to see them reboot it in a similar style to what they did with Crash 4.
Now, if Toys for Bob can't do it, there is a studio that I think should helm it, that actually did a remaster of a 3D platformer from my childhood that is kick ass, by the way. I love it. Purple Lamp Studios, who did SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. I will insert gameplay of that right fucking now, because that game is insanely good. They basically took the game from the PS2, prettied it up, and just put it out there. And it's awesome. It kicks ass. Definitely go play that. So, Purple Lamp would be another good option for Jak and Daxter, or even Sly Cooper, actually, now that I think about it.
That is an interesting take. I have not played the remaster, but I believe I got it free through PlayStation Plus at one point.
Yeah,
One of the
you
SpongeBob
did.
games.
Yeah, you did. You got Battle for Bikini Bottom, because I remember as soon as it was announced for PS Plus, I basically hounded you about it.
Yep. You know my memory, it's sometimes shit.
Yeah, but when it comes to stuff like that, I do remember that. Because, yeah. I really do want you to play that game, though. It's so much fun.
It's going to be my first time playing it, because I picked it up and, like, played it a little bit at, like, my younger cousin's house when I was, like, really younger. But, like, I never got any extended period of time playing it, you know?
Ah, okay. Well, I cannot wait for the streams for that.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to be streaming that when I get around to it.
So yeah, Purple Lamp. Definitely, if you're going to bring back either Sly or Jak and Daxter, put them on if you can't get any of the other studios that we mentioned. So, for the next one, I'll take it over again, because it's one that I am actually really, really familiar with, and that is Twisted fucking Metal, baby. I love Twisted Metal. I grew up on Twisted Metal. I rented it all the time, and my brother actually had a copy of, I think it was Twisted Metal 2, that he gave to me, and I played the ever-loving hell out of that game. So, Twisted Metal, as I just said, it is a series that was mostly around in the late 90s to early 2000s. So you had 4 games on the PS1, and then you had a 5th game in Twisted Metal Black on the PS2. And it's a car combat series. You pick a character, and you just run around these different levels that are basically based around real life cities or countries or stuff like that, and you just blow all the cars up with with an assortment of weapons and special weapons and power-ups and stuff like that. It's a really fun series to get into. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, there was a PS3 reboot that came out in 2012. I did play it. It was fun, but not nearly as fun as the other 5 games that I mentioned.
What was your introduction to Twisted Metal?
My introduction to Twisted Metal was actually Twisted Metal 2 that my brother gave me, because I heard my friends talking about it, and I didn't really get to play it until I got my PS2, and so once I got my PS2 and my brother gave me that copy of Twisted Metal 2, I was hooked. I was like, oh my god, I need to, because the PS2 was basically, it doubled as both the PS1 and PS2.
And a DVD player on top of that.
Yeah, so that basically helped me out so much, because I played so many PS1 games as a result of that. Resident Evils, and the Final Fantasy games that were on PS1, and Twisted Metal 1, 3, and 4. I rented those. And so, playing those and getting the feel for them really helped out whenever I saw Twisted Metal Black. Because I saw Sweet Tooth on the cover. If you don't know who Sweet Tooth is, I'm going to put a picture of him up on the screen right now. He is this badass looking dude with a clown mask, and he's got this fucking flaming hair. Really cool looking character. And his vehicle is basically an ice cream truck. And so you drive around with this thing, you shoot machine guns at people, you can fire rockets at people. It's such a cool weapon. It's such a cool vehicle, such a cool character. His backstory is really fucked up. Really fucked up. But, I don't know, I just love his look. Like,
He has a very iconic look, and he kind of set the tone for PlayStation's more mature mascots.
Yeah, because he is one of the mascots of PlayStation. Whether Sony wants to admit it or not, that he is. He is an iconic character. He basically is the face of Twisted Metal. Because if you look at Twisted Metal games going forward, from like...
He's always on the cover.
Either him or his fucking car is always on the cover of these games. So, yeah. So, what is your experience with Twisted Metal?
My first experience with Twisted Metal was Twisted Metal Small Brawl, because my dad saw it, he thought it was funny looking, and he was like, oh, my kid's gonna like that. And I was hooked. Did you ever play Small Brawl?
I didn't, actually. So, what platform did Small Brawl come on? Was it a PSP game?
PS1.
PS1. Okay, I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah, it was... What year was it released? I think it was 2001.
Okay.
I'm looking that up right now. I'm just double-checking my facts. Yeah,
Fair.
2001. November 26, 2001.
Alright. Now, I've never heard of that game before now, so...
I'm going to pop a link to it for you so that you can check it out real quick.
Awesome. I'll look at that after we get done here, because if I go and do anything else, I think my computer's gonna freeze the fuck up, because,
Fair enough.
OBS is using a lot of fucking CPU.
Fair enough. But basically, it was a Twisted Metal game that was directed at kids. That was kind of the whole idea behind it.
Ah, okay. Now, I never saw that in the rental stores. All I saw was, the big boy games. The first four and Black. And not to mention, I was kind of a rebel at that point. If I wanted to go for a kiddie game, I went for the platformers. But if I played anything else, I was just like, give me the most hardcore shit ever. Like, Grand Theft Auto and stuff like that. I was a little rebel with gaming back then.
Well, it was rated T for teen, so it was still not super little kids, but like it would probably get an E10 rating now if it was re-released.
Fair enough.
It's still pretty violent, and it's still got a lot of fucked up storylines, but it's toned down enough that younger audiences could enjoy it.
Okay. So...
And it actually has one of the most iconic levels in Twisted Metal. You know how they incorporated football stadiums, right?
Oh, so that was from that game?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know where in the hell that came from.
Yeah, it made its debut in Small Brawl.
That's insane. I'm gonna have to go look at that. Okay. But, after Small Brawl...
It incorporated a lot of mini-games, too.
Okay, so after Small Brawl...
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, after Small Brawl, what order did you play the games in after that? Or did you play any of the other games after that?
I took a very long break because Twisted Metal Black was mature, and my folks were, they didn't really want me playing mature games for whatever reason. Respect that. Anyways, didn't play Black for the longest time, and then when the 2012 Reboot happened, I was like, yep, I'm grabbing it. I managed to play it at a friend's place when I was in college, and it was a drunk night, and that's about all I remember. It was kind of fun, and then I saw at a used shop Twisted Metal Black for $2, and I was like, yeah, I'm picking this up, and then I popped it in my PS2, and I had some fun times for a couple hours with it.
Alright, alright. So, yeah, Twisted Metal, I think definitely should come back now. Here's the studio I want to see tackle this. And it's actually a studio that Leifer here is pretty familiar with because he's played this game. I forget the name of it, but that car game that was on the PS5 around launch, I forget what the fucking name of that game
Destruction
was.
All-Stars, and I was just about to say that's the studio I want handling it, and guess what? Here's a fun fact about Destruction All-Stars. It was actually a proof of concept that they made for the feasibility of a Twisted Metal game, because guess what? Everyone at the studio, which is Lucid Games, they are huge Twisted Metal fans.
Awesome. So yeah, that would be the perfect studio for that. Because I looked at Destruction All-Stars and I was like, wow, okay. This basically looks like a really toned down Twisted Metal game. I want these guys to just bring that series back. So yeah, let them bring that series back. Please. You got Twisted Metal fans there.
Even though Destruction All-Stars performed kind of in terms of reviews, the thing is, it wasn't because the studio didn't put love and care into the game. They definitely did. It was definitely a bit unbalanced, and it was definitely a bit shallow, but the thing is, it was kind of more of a proof of concept that wound up getting a retail release, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I feel like the launch of that game really helped with the mixed reviews. You know, I feel like if Sony had given them a little bit more time to really do some cool things with that game, it definitely would have helped the reception of that game more. But literally everybody that's played Destruction All-Stars has literally said, let these guys resurrect Twisted Metal.
And you know what? I started my Twitch career with Destruction All-Stars. That was the very first game I streamed.
There you go. And so, with that being said, if they do bring back Twisted Metal, which is definitely looking like more and more of a possibility if that TV show that was being rumored about actually happens,
mm-hmm.
Who would you want to see come back as characters? Definitely Sweet Tooth. That's a shoo-in.
Spectre.
Man, there's so many characters that I want to see come back. But I'd say if I just had to choose one, Axel. I gotta see Axel come back.
Yeah. Which one was the Grim Reaper character?
Oh man, his name's escaping me right now. Damn it. I think his name's like Caretaker or Undertaker or something like that. I think it's Caretaker.
That's who I played in Small Brawl. Was the Grim Reaper guy. Also, it was RC. It was RC cars instead of real cars, so it was like that was unique, and they could actually make that like a little gameplay mode, even.
Yeah. Call it Small Brawl mode or something like that. You know?
Yeah. Basically, if they reboot Twisted Metal, make it a love letter to the fans.
Exactly. Have a really cool, kick-ass story mode, which Black and 4 and definitely that fucking Reboot did. That Reboot had an awesome story mode to it. And if any of you get the chance to play that Reboot, whether it be on actual PS3 hardware or through the PlayStation Premium service, which I think that's on there.
We'll have to check that, but yeah.
Yeah, so either way you can play it, definitely give it a chance, okay? Because that game also got mixed reviews back in the day. Because, you know, it had a great story mode, but the multiplayer kind of was lacking on it.
Mm-hmm. And it was kind of at a point where studios were still learning online multiplayer, if you think about it.
Yeah. That was when online multiplayer was, you know, kind of
in its infancy.
Outside of first-person shooters. Because by that point, it had been perfected in first-person shooters. But outside of that, it was kind of hit or miss, basically.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, like, Twisted Metal is perfect because they could incorporate so many modes. They could go over the top with the weapons. They could even incorporate characters from other PlayStation franchises if they wanted to go really over the top with it.
Yeah, and they could go also over the top with the map design. That was another thing that was really cool about the classic games, is the maps in those games were so cool and over the top that you literally could just have fun riding around in those different maps, seeing the different landmarks and shit like that. And I know I didn't really even care if I won or lost. I was just having fun on the maps. Basically.
Same here, and you know what? That is... Twisted Metal Black was one of the few PlayStation games with a realistic art style that aged beautifully.
I agree with that. And if you still have a PS4 or even a PS5, you can download the PS2 and PS4 release of that game. I have that, and I should have gameplay up for it right now. But yeah, that right there, good times. Good times.
And I'd say it aged so beautifully because it leaned super hard into what the hardware limitations of that console were. That console was never going to produce games that would be beautiful by modern standards, but it just embraced being grim, grungy, and dank.
Yeah, it was... That style was literally all over the game. Even on the cover. Literally just plastered on it. And you can tell in the soundtrack, in the story beats, in the maps, everything, basically.
Mm-hmm. So we'll move on to another car-based game that I would like to see return. I would really love to see MotorStorm come back.
Now, MotorStorm is a series that I really... Okay, so when I went to go decide whether I wanted to buy a PS3 or 360 back in the day, there was a demo for the original MotorStorm at Walmart, because my town didn't have a GameStop at the time. So what you would do is you would go to Walmart and you would play the demos that were on the displays in there. There was your controller near the bottom of the fucking glass case that was at a perfect height for you to hold on to it, and then you had to look up because the TV screen was at the top of the glass case. So you would sit there, play whatever demos were there. I played MotorStorm on the PS3 side. Mm-hmm. And I had fun with it, but then I looked at the selection for the PS3 and I was just like, there's nothing really outside of this that kind of hooked me, you know? And then I looked over at the 360 side of things and I'm just like, oh, okay, so there's Halo 3, which had just come out around that time. There is Call of Duty 4 that's coming out in like a month or two. So everybody's on a hype train for that, so I might want to jump on that. So everything just led to me getting a 360 at the time. But I said if I ever got a PS3, I would play MotorStorm, and I was a massive hypocrite because I never fucking did.
Well, I fell in love with the series even though it was kind of janky. And, like, you played the demo, so you kind of know what I mean by it was janky.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. The maps were fun. They were chaotic. There was definitely a cool mechanic with the overheating system and you having to drive through water to cool down your
and
parts
ice
on
in
your
later
car.
game.
Yep.
And ice in later games. And it had some of the best mud physics ever. It still hasn't been topped, in my opinion, the mud physics in a racing game.
Alright. But yeah, it had some cool mechanics to it, but the cars themselves, the handling was very...
It was like they were either too sluggish or too sensitive.
Yeah, nowhere in between, because I would play with one car, and it would drift like it was drifting through molasses. And then I would play with another car, and it felt like it was drifting on fucking solid ice.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but the thing is, that series had so much potential, and it showed the PS3's power. It was a very powerful console for the time, and it actually did produce some very beautiful games. You have to admit that.
yeah. And I loved watching people play that game. Like, I watched videos on YouTube about that game all the fucking time back then.
Did you watch the videos on the sequels?
Yeah, well, one of them.
Which one?
The second game. I forget what it's called.
Okay, Pacific Rift.
Yeah, Pacific Rift. Loved that game. From what I saw of it, it looked like a really dope game, honestly.
It was. It still had the physics problem, but it was a lot better. And it really, you can tell that they really learned a lot about water physics from the Uncharted guys.
Ah, yeah, because the water physics did look a little bit better in that game. Obviously, because it was water themed. It was water themed, that game was.
Yeah, and that's something that I loved about the PS3 era, is you can tell that these studios were really working in tandem together to, like, go and push the hardware as hard as they damn well could.
Yeah, and they made each other's games better. Because like you said, they went to the Uncharted guys, they taught them how water physics worked, and they have a pretty dope game in MotorStorm Pacific Rift.
Mm-hmm. And MotorStorm Apocalypse, which you can play through PlayStation Plus Extra or Premium, I forget which right now. Oh, that game. Let's put it this way, they made the handling just that little bit better. It was almost perfect at that point. If they could have just kept going with the series, they would have perfected it. Because they perfected how cars felt in Drive Club a generation later. Because it's the same studio that worked on MotorStorm as worked on Drive Club.
Okay, so here's what I suggest. Bring that studio back, or bring the devs from that studio back. And
sadly, they're all kind of spread out now because Sony closed down Evolution Studios.
Ah, okay. So, here's what I think. I think that you should give it to a studio or developers that loved racing games, loved either loved arcade racers, because that's the vibe it gave off was.
It was an arcade racer through and through.
Okay, so let people that love arcade racers work on that. Let people that love MotorStorm work on that, or both.
Yep.
So that way you have a studio, and you can make it a brand new studio. You could call them MotorStorm Studios, and just let them work on fucking MotorStorm games. I'm telling you, Sony. I'm telling you, if you put the time and effort into a good racing game, because one of your biggest things is you want to start focusing on multiplayer. A good racing game with a good fucking multiplayer. Money. Straight money. Straight money.
Yep. Also, the thing is, that would still be a great option for couch co-op. I know that it's slowly dying, but the thing is, they're slowly bringing it back as well, a lot of studios. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. I actually am. Especially, weirdly enough, EA with those with A Way Out and It Takes Two. It Takes Two is a fantastic game, by the way. Definitely play that one if you're into couch co-op.
But like couch co-op, physically couch co-op, that's kind of making a comeback, and I'm impressed. That makes me happy.
Yeah.
Because
so
it really extends the shelf life of a game. Also, MotorStorm now would be the perfect game to showcase the hardware on the PS5, if you really think about it.
Exactly, because you have a series that was basically centered around showing people just how cool and powerful the PS3 was, right? So, why not bring that series back and use it as a means to show how powerful the fucking PS5 is? Because it was a realistic looking game, And that's what Sony's going for, is more realistic tones, right? So you could definitely do it.
Also, just imagine being able to use the DualSense and how that would expand the gameplay possibilities of an arcade racer.
Yeah, for sure.
What are your thoughts on the general idea of the haptic feedback and the adaptive triggers of the DualSense?
Now, when he asked me this is him knowing, because for those of you that don't know, I have a PS4 right now. I don't have a PS5. So, this is coming from somebody that has not even touched the DualSense, okay? I just want to preface that. But, to me, they sound like gimmicks. They honestly do. They sound like gimmicks to me. Now, I could say that right now, and I could get one of those things in my hand and just be raving about it like everybody else does.
And I'm one of the raving ones, as you've noticed.
Yep. And it's very much a possibility. But for right now, as someone who only has a PS4 and has not even touched a DualSense, it seems like a damn gimmick to me.
You know what? I'll tell you one thing I love about the DualSense in Mortal Kombat. You can actually feel when you press down the block button.
Okay, then.
Like, it doesn't hamper how your block works. It's just it gives you a tactile feedback to let you know, good job, you blocked something. And you can kind of, like, you can also use the vibration to kind of judge where your opponent's next attack might be coming from.
That's actually pretty cool. I like that. So...
Also, I've used it in Gran Turismo 7.
Okay.
You can actually tell when you're going too hard on the throttle.
See, there's some cool things that I think they could do in MotorStorm with that. Like, they could literally make you feel the water on the car when you drive through water in that game. You could feel the mud hitting your car, things like that.
Which Gran Turismo does, and also in Astro's Playroom, this is just an aside, you can actually feel the individual rain droplets in certain sections of that game's platforming.
Okay, that's dope. So, moving on from that, what studio would you want to see working on MotorStorm if they decide to resurrect that? Or do you agree with my idea?
I agree with your idea, but you know what? I could see Lucid being a really good fit as well.
Yeah, you know what? Because you told me that the cars themselves in Destruction All-Stars felt pretty good from what you had experience with anyway.
They do. They feel really good. Like, you can tell that someone actually thought about it. Like, the heavy cars actually feel like tanks. The little nimble cars feel like little nimble cars. And the kind of midweight cars, they get the best of both worlds. And they use the haptic feedback exceptionally well. Because the adaptive triggers let you know just how hard you're throwing down on the throttle. They also let you know how hard you actually hit your opponent when the controller vibrates as well.
Alright.
Criterion's another studio I could see doing well with this.
Oh, dude, they were my second option. Yeah. They were my second option for that, because, okay, Criterion, if you know Criterion, then you know that they did the Burnout games back in the day, some of the most well-received and fan-favorite Burnout games, like 3, Revenge, Paradise, which is the one I love the most.
Same here, I love Paradise. That game single-handedly got me interested in the whole Burnout series.
For me, it was 3, but then when I played Paradise, I was just like, this is peak Burnout right here. You know? So...
Well, it's not a PlayStation exclusive, just as an aside. I'd love to see a new Burnout game.
Same. We got Burnout love here on this channel.
Yeah, for sure.
So, moving on from that, one series that I have a ton of experience with, and I would love to see be resurrected, especially now in the age of these developers going for more tactical shooters. SOCOM U.S. Navy SEALs, we need it back. We need it back.
That would be cool. Also, you know what? I would really like to see them do another attempt at MAG. Did you ever play that one?
No, I didn't. By the time I got a PS3, the MAG servers were toast at that point.
Ah, okay, well, I got to play it a little bit. I never owned it, but, you know, I had friends who owned it. And, whoa, it showed the potential for massive, chaotic shooters.
I saw some gameplay of it from a couple YouTubers I was pretty big fans of back in the day, and dude, that game looked insane. That was actually one of the reasons why I bought a PS3. And then by the time I got it, the damn servers were nuked. I was so disappointed.
Disappointed!
I bet you were. And you know what? It actually had a lot of solid gameplay options, too. It wasn't just a, hey, here's a massive tech demo for you guys.
That's pretty cool. So,
and I actually got into a couple games where it was 120 players on the same map.
that's insane.
Like, servers don't even do that now.
And they were doing that in the PS3 era.
Yeah.
That's wild. That is wild.
Now imagine if they just hybridized SOCOM and MAG.
Oh, dude. Okay, so before we go on a tangent here, well, I'm about to when it comes to SOCOM, because I love that series. So, SOCOM is this third-person tactical shooter on these big maps, right? You went around, you basically employed these tactics to complete certain tasks in these certain missions, and it was really fun. Also, the multiplayer for that game, if you've ever played it, you know, but my god, the multiplayer was so much fun on that game. Now, I didn't get internet until like 2007, so I didn't have too much experience with that, but I did manage to get a multiplayer adapter, an internet. I think it was an Ethernet adapter, really cheap at a pawn shop, and I went and I did hook it up to my PS2, and I played the shit out of SOCOM 2 online. Oh my god, that game was so much fun. I didn't have the keyboard that there was a keyboard attachment to it where you could attach a keyboard and actually talk in keyboard chat. Didn't ever get to fully take advantage of that, but me and my buddy Thomas, we played the shit out of that game online together. Oh man, it was so much fun.
You know, I never took my PS2 online.
I did, just because I had the opportunity to, you know.
Yeah, I never did. My first gaming experiences of online were StarCraft, Warcraft, and PS3 era stuff.
My first online experience was actually not at, not on any of my consoles. It was at a friend's house. I played Halo 2 split screen with him, and oh my god, that was fun. I was hooked on really online gaming after that, because I was like, whoa, this is fun.
By the way, since we're kind of on this tangent, did you know that Ratchet & Clank was one of the, not the first game, but I think it was the second game. Yeah, it was the second game that had online functionality, and it was one of the first, if not the first, PlayStation 2 game to have online functionality.
Nice. And what he's talking about here is the third game in the series. I think that was the only one on the PS2 that had that functionality.
Nope. Multiple Ratchet games had online functionality on the PS2.
Alright then.
But, yeah, that was one of the first ones.
Alright.
It was one of the Ratchet ones. And you know what? Since I'm just going to go off on a quick tangent here, I would really love to see Insomniac bring back multiplayer Ratchet.
You know what? I think we should make a full episode on that.
Yep.
So
I agree.
So we're gonna cut it off right there, so that you can get you just got a little taste of it. If you want that episode, let us know in the comments below. We'll try to make it happen.
So another game series, unless you want to continue on the topic you were on.
No, that's actually, hold on. So the studio that I want to see make a new SOCOM, I actually want somehow them to get all the people that made MAG back and go and make a new SOCOM. I think those guys and gals and non-binary folks, obviously, I think all those people would just kick ass with SOCOM, because they were doing incredible things with a game that they obviously didn't have enough time to make as perfect as they wanted to. So if Sony just gave them an opportunity with SOCOM to do something and give them time to do it, I think they could do something there. I honestly do.
I agree.
So
I've got a very pivoty game here, because it's not related to any of the types that we've talked about before. It's a JRPG, actually. I would really love Folklore to come back.
Folklore. Now, I have never heard of this game, so I have no stake in this discussion. So
it was kind of a action-based JRPG with creature catching elements.
So it was basically it was a JRPG with a little bit of Pokemon in there, basically.
Yep. And it had a comic book presentation for the cutscenes.
Ooh, okay.
It had a couple of, voiced CGI moments, but the majority of the story was told through animated comic book sequences.
Alrighty.
And it was incredibly dark, and it played with European folklore.
Alright, so if Sony goes and they do decide to, yoink this out of the back, out of the vault, and decide to do something with it, who do you think should do it? Who do you think should have an opportunity to do something with that?
Honestly, I can't think of a studio. I think that this one they would either have to find a very small JRPG developer, maybe Falcom, but they kind of have their own way of doing things, so they might be out. Or they might have to just headhunt the best talent in the JRPG market from Japan.
Fair.
Because this game, it convinced me on the 6-axis. It was one of the few that actually made sense with the 6-axis.
Okay.
And it showed, this little thing, this little device, it can do stuff. Because some monsters required you to, balance it and get it, they'd be tilting one way, so you'd have to tilt your controller the other way. Some had you flicking it, like you were flicking a lasso. Some had you shaking it like you were trying to beat the shit out of the monster, after you'd already beaten the shit out of the monster to make their soul pop out.
That sounds fun. Honestly, that sounds fun.
It was, and it had tight action RPG hack and slash gameplay. It was kind of simple and button mashy, but it basically would be comparable to of that era Tales of games in terms of combat.
Okay, that's cool. And
your attacks, they were mapped to the face buttons. So you would actually summon the creatures that you caught, and their attacks would be very specific. So, some would be able to break down barriers that were in your way. Some would have advantages against certain types of monsters. And it was just, super deep, super complex.
Wow. I've always said this. A lot of a lot of people and a lot of developers really try to overcomplicate things for the sake of having depth. Depth can really come, a lot of depth can really come from just something super simple. Right?
Like what I just described, right?
Exactly. Folklore being a perfect example of that. Super simple concept, but with a lot of depth because of its simplicity. So, okay. So, moving on from that, there's actually a JRPG series that I personally want to see come back. I don't know if you have any experience with this one.
I just want to say one more thing on Folklore, if that's okay.
All right.
The graphics of it still look amazing. In fact, they look like a modern-day indie JRPG.
All right, then. So, my last franchise that I want to see come back here, and anyone who has played these games, please join me in this rallying cry. Square. Square. Bring back Shadow Hearts.
I've never played the Shadow Hearts series, but a lot of my friends have told me I would love it.
Oh yeah, you would. You absolutely would. When you get your PC set up, I will hook you up.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So, what these games are, it's basically a JRPG series. Duh. Square Enix is involved, so it has to be, right? Well, Squaresoft actually at the time. So, it's this JRPG series that actually has a horror theme to it, and you're going around fighting these fucking vampires and these fucking creepy looking creatures, and it had this really cool and unique system called the Judgment Ring, which is where if you timed these things correctly on the Judgment Ring, you got a bonus to your attacks, basically. So it incentivized you to pay attention to what was going on the screen if you wanted to have the maximum amount of damage output. So it was turn-based, which is probably something that just sold you on a game right there.
Yeah, instantly sold me.
So, yeah, it was a turn-based system. I will definitely... Yeah, you know what? I have PCSX too. Yeah, so I will insert gameplay of this. Okay, I'll have gameplay of this going right now on the screen. Because this game, and it had a really good story too. Really good, really creepy storyline that actually started back on the PS1 with Kudelka. Which is basically kind of like a... It started the series, obviously, but it's kind of in its own timeline. So you can play Kudelka on its own and be perfectly fine with it. But if you play that game and then you play Shadow Hearts, you get the full experience there. Because they do make some sneaky references to Kudelka in the Shadow Hearts games that will fly straight the fuck over your head if you didn't play that. So, yeah.
That sounds fascinating. Which Square team would you have working on it?
Which Square team? Now that's actually really, that's a great question. Let the Dragon Quest team work on it. Those people know how...
They're pretty busy right now.
Yeah, I know. So it'll probably never happen, but that's my dream scenario. Those people know how to make an incredible turn-based RPG, and I think if you give them that series with that type of system, they can make something incredible with it.
What about the team behind Octopath Traveler?
Ooh, that's actually my second option. Either them or the team that's behind Bravely Default.
Those are all three excellent choices, and I really want to check that particular series out.
Don't worry. I'll make sure that you're able to. Okay, once you get your PC set up, I got you. I got you on that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So I think that about wraps things up, unless you've got any other series that you want to talk about real quick.
No, that about, like I said, Shadow Hearts was the last one I wanted to mention. So, thank you guys for watching. And
I did think of one more that I would like to see.
Go right on ahead, sir. You have the floor.
The Tomba series.
Tomba series?
They were a PS1 2D platformer.
Now, I have heard of these games, but I've never played them specifically. So, Tell me a little bit more about it.
Drawn sprite art.
I do like sprite art. 2D
Very,
sprites. Way to get to my heart.
very expressive characters. Pretty big levels for PS1 era stuff. Not like Castlevania huge because it's not a Metroidvania, but like it was linear, but big linear. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. So basically, it was linear, but it made you think that it was more open than it actually was, basically.
Yep. Yes, and it did have branching pathways.
Okay.
And it was just... It felt pretty janky because the controls were so floaty, but it was a beautiful game, and it was a fast-paced platformer.
Alright.
It looked like you were... And if they really had a more powerful system than the PS1, they could have really made it look like you were playing a Saturday morning cartoon of the era.
Ooh, I like that. So who do you think should be working on this if they was to, go into the vault and resurrect it?
I think that they'd have to find someone like the studio behind Hollow Knight or Ori or something like that. But someone who's a little bit more into the linear 2D platformers.
Okay. So, like, the person who, like, Yacht Club, the people that made Shovel Knight, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. And actually, you just mentioned, you mentioning Tomba actually got my brain to working a little bit. Because, there's one series that I played on, I believe it was the PS1 or the PS2. And, hold on, let me look this up real quick. Because there's a series on either the PS1 or the PS2 that I would love to see come back. And it's another platform. Oh yeah, Gex.
Yep, Gex. I'd love that to come back. And you know what? I think Gex would be almost the perfect game for this era. Because think about what Gex ultimately was. He was a commentary on gaming and pop culture at the time.
Yeah, and he made like really snide, really snarky remarks about that. And at the time, if you were a kid, it flew right over your head. You had no idea what he was talking about. But the fact that he came with these one-liners and stuff like that, and even in the third game, he literally looks like, a gecko dressed as James Bond, and he's saying these one-liners. It's just like, yeah, So
it's kind of cool that Gex had different regional variants. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did. Okay, I didn't notice it when I was a kid, obviously, because I didn't have the technology to be able to do research, but when I got this PC, I basically was bored one night, and I said, you know what, I'm going to look into Gex and see if there was different versions or anything like that in different regions. Boy, the rabbit hole I went down there.
You know what? I actually started with the original Gex on the PS1.
I started with 2, Enter the Gecko.
Well, here's something you'll find interesting. Gex 1, 2D platformer.
Yeah, and then Enter the Gecko is when it went into the 3D collectathon Mario 64 style of platformer.
And you know what? I kind of prefer the 2D one.
I prefer the 3D collectathon one because that for a lot of my friends back at the time that had only PlayStation systems and didn't get to play Mario 64, that was their Mario 64, and they loved that game.
Understandable. I prefer the 2D version because they just, for whatever reason, were able to make the aesthetic just cool as hell. Because guess what? They actually had a lot of horror-themed levels. And I was kind of a scaredy kid. I was not scared of the horror-themed levels, and I actually found them fun and schlocky.
Yeah, I did too. Because I rented Enter the Gecko, and then I went and rented Gex 3, and then I went back and played 1, and it was kind of a jarring type of shift in the gameplay, but once I got used to it, I was like, okay, this is fun. And I actually have
The
all
same
3
kind of
games
jarring.
on here on my PC, so I will be putting gameplay for it up right here.
Nice. I guess it was as jarring as moving from Jack 1 to Jack 2, eh?
Yeah, just as jarring as that, but it wasn't jarring to the point to where it kind of ruined the series for me. It actually enhanced it.
Understandable. Also, I think this is one of the few times where I prefer something in 2D to you preferring something in 3D.
Yeah, because usually it's the other way around. Usually I prefer the 2D and you prefer the 3D, but not in this case.
Yep. Alright, anything else you want to say before we sign out for real this time?
Nope. That's basically it.
Alright. So, we're going to sign out now. You can catch me on twitch.tv/Slafer90 if you would like to, and the rest of my socials will be in the description below. Have a good one, guys.
Have a good one, everyone.